Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first episode of Right Taiwan. I'm Nathan Novak, and with me today is my partner in crime here at Right Taiwan, Mike Fagan. I am reporting from Kaohsiung, and Mike is reporting from north of me in Tainan. Mike, how are you tonight?
I'm fine. How about yourself?
Wonderful, enjoying the great weather. It's been a wonderful, wonderful winter. It hasn't even really been a winter at all. It's been great, but tonight our focus is going to be on, in our first episode, our inaugural episode, is going to be on the reservoir situation in Taiwan and energy situations as well in Taiwan. And Mike, you recently wrote a blog post about Taiwan's reservoirs, and you've been studying reservoirs for a long time. I'm curious. I guess my first question for you is, what brought you to study Taiwan's reservoirs, and how long have you been studying them?
Okay, so about 6 years is the short answer to that. Since around June 2011. So it was in June 2011 that I read a short piece in the Taipei Times about water levels being quite low in Thailand's reservoirs. And so I went out one weekend to go and have a look, just because I was bored. So I took a bunch of pictures and posted them on my blog. And shortly afterwards, I got an email from a Taiwanese man in the US who knew and who had historical photographs and other information about the Taiwanese engineers who'd been part of the reservoir projects in the 1950s and 1960s. And he sent me some of these historical photographs and documents, and we had an email exchange. And he suggested to me that if I was interested in the topic, that I should go and visit Argongen Reservoir in Kaohsiung. For those who don't know, Argongen is the Taiwanese term for grandpa shop. Grandpa shop reservoir, Argongen Reservoir in Kaohsiung. And so I did. I went and visited, and I took a lot of photographs, and I did a bit of research, and I ended up writing a somewhat lengthy blog post about Argongen Reservoir. And that proved to be sufficiently interesting that it occurred to me to do the same thing at each of Taiwan's other reservoirs and make the whole thing into a book. Now, to put that into some sort of personal context, I think I'd been in Taiwan already at that point for 6 years after having quit my PhD program in Edinburgh in the UK. And so I suppose I'd been sort of drifting somewhat aimlessly for that 5 or 6 years. But I'd always had in mind the idea that I should assume a responsibility for to assume the responsibility of owning up to my own ambition of becoming something of a journalist, but a real journalist rather than the established sense of journalist, which we throw around today as an insult. Oh, you journalist, you know.
Yeah.
Where
I know.
they write things in the newspapers about topics of which they have little to no knowledge and don't care anyway, and they get a lot of the facts wrong.
It's basically hacks.
So,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
hacks, essentially, yeah. I was interested in doing that partly because I kind of wanted to be a journalist when I was at school, and also because I have like you as well, I think, I have a lot of reservations about postgraduate research and the position that postgraduates often find themselves in after having received their master's degree or after having received their PhD, basically having to become research associates and essentially looking forward to the future of data entry, running one-way, two-way anomalies all day long, and going to conferences where you're presenting somebody else's work. So I wasn't particularly enthusiastic about that, and so I'd been in Taiwan after having quit my PhD program in Edinburgh, and I'd been somewhat aimless and just sort of absorbing the culture shock and the experience of living in a different, not just a different country, but in a totally different culture on the other side of the world. I'd already traveled in Europe quite a lot, but to come to Taiwan was completely different. So a bit of aimlessness for a few years, and I really had in mind that I should knuckle down, take up some responsibility, and get something done. It would be the beginning of an ambition, and so that's what it became. And I decided to write a book about Taiwan's reservoirs. And my aim was to kind of follow a previous book which had been written in Chinese and published by NTU, National Taiwan University, in 2006. Except that where that book was all in Chinese, I would write it in both English and Chinese, or have someone to help me with the Chinese, because my Chinese is it's good, but it's not great.
It's there.
Yeah. I wanted to also make the book more up to date, because a lot of things have happened since 2006. In particular, we have 2 new reservoirs, and there's also a lot of major remedial engineering projects going on, and a lot of stuff has happened since 2006. And I also wanted to improve the photography, because I felt that the photography in the 2006 NTU book was sometimes quite good, but sometimes it seemed to be done opportunistically on a very, very limited time budget. Basically, they'd send someone out there with what looks to be a cell phone camera, and on a grey overcast day, just take a picture, that's it, that'll do. And I wanted to go into a lot more detail, a lot more depth. And my book, I had 3 aims for the book then in particular. First of all, that the book should describe Taiwan's reservoirs objectively, without offering any commentary about public policy, about the government should do this or the government should do that. So that it would be objective, it would be down the line, and people could draw their own conclusions. And the second thing was that that in doing that, the book would help to dispel a number of myths, misrepresentations, and distortions that you can see in the media, which are peddled by activist groups and NGOs who really have a political axe to grind, and who, although sometimes they have some valid points, will nonetheless go out of their way to distort things, to distort the situation, and to make it appear far worse than what it actually is. And it's only when you actually visit the reservoirs repeatedly, as I've done over the last 6 years, that you can see immediately the kinds of distortions that they're making. Whereas someone who is not familiar with the topic, who's maybe visited a reservoir once or twice in the last 10 years with their family, for example, during Chinese New Year, they wouldn't necessarily see that. And my third aim was that I would, as I said earlier, I would improve on the existing book published by NTU in 2006. So that's really where I'm coming from in my studies of Taiwan's reservoirs.
Okay. But just as an aside here, I'm wondering, I'm curious, do you know where the name Agongdian came from? What's the origin of it? Do you have any information on that? You do? Okay.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
like a strange name for a reservoir.
Grandpa Shop, yeah.
Yeah.
It's called Agongdian Reservoir because I'm going to have to talk and digress a little bit about Agongdian Reservoir a bit later on as well.
Please do.
But not just yet. But Agongdian Reservoir, because Agongdian Reservoir is really special. It's really unique in Taiwan, basically because it's so fucked up. But Agongdian Reservoir was built on it's in Gansan. It's actually the border between several counties in Kaohsiung. You've got Yanqiao County, Gansan County, Alian County, and Qianyao County, and it kind of it's in the area between all those counties. So it was built there because, for several reasons, but one reason was that Um, it was a stop-off point between the northern sugarcane fields and the southern port of Kaohsiung. So they had a railway north to south, and a road which at that time a lot of people would, there were not so many cars and trucks, but a lot of traffic would have been basically people on foot, traveling on foot. And so it's a stop-off point. And on the stop in that area, that stop-off point, there was no town, but there was a little shop, grandpa shop, where
I suppose it makes sense then. Okay.
grandpa sort of, like a little, kind of like a convenience store, where they'd sell like water and snacks.
Like we might say in the States, a mom and pop sort of.
Mom and pop kind of store, yeah. That's apparently the reason why it's called Angkor as well, yeah.
Good. Well, thank you for that. You mentioned earlier that Taiwan has got too many reservoirs. I'm curious, how many reservoirs have you personally visited, and can you describe for the layman like myself or like someone going out to the reservoirs, the main differences in construction technology and the uses of those reservoirs?
Well, first, I don't think I said Taiwan has too many reservoirs, but anyway.
I must have misunderstood you. Okay.
No, so how many reservoirs have I visited personally?
Yeah.
Of the major reservoirs.
Yeah. Okay.
All of them.
All of them.
I visited all of them, which is 24 major reservoirs.
Okay.
On the main island of
high
Taiwan.
number for an island of Taiwan size?
I really don't know.
Okay.
I haven't compared that to other countries of similar, or other island nations of similar size. So I'm not sure about that. But yeah. So I've been to all of the major reservoirs in Taiwan. That's 24 major reservoirs. That's on the main island of Taiwan. So I'm not counting the reservoirs on Penghu and in Yanqiang counties, which is the offshore islands. There are several reservoirs in Penghu and in Yanqiang. And I haven't yet visited those, so I'm really only talking about the main island of Taiwan. So 24 major reservoirs. But there are also a number of minor reservoirs as well. And depending on how you count them, 17 minor reservoirs. I visited most of those. There are 3 I haven't yet seen. Next part of the question was about uses of reservoirs in construction technology, right? Okay, so I'll go with the uses of reservoirs first. So reservoirs generally, you have 4 functions in aggregate. You have water conservation, flood control, electricity generation, and recreational use. And there's a lot of variation among Taiwan's reservoirs in how many of those functions are performed. So a lot of the major reservoirs will perform all 4 functions. So for instance, Shimen Reservoir in northern Taiwan, in Taoyuan County, it has a large hydroelectric power plant to produce electricity. Obviously, it performs the job of water conservation, holds back about 300 million cubic meters of water, although somewhat less than that now. That's the capacity it was designed with. And it's recreational use. People go there to visit it, and there are shops and things like this, so people can walk around and take boat tours and things. And also flood control. It's a huge dam, and it holds back a lot of water and releases it slowly. So when you have a large rainfall event, the river downstream from the reservoir, the flow is controlled by the fact that the dam is so large, and you can release water slowly into the river. But there are other reservoirs where you may only have 1 or 2 of these functions performed. So to give you a few examples of that, there's a reservoir here in Tainan called Jianshanli Reservoir, which was built by the Taiwan Sugar Corporation during the Japanese colonial period in the 1930s. And today, that reservoir has become an historical relic and really only performs 1 function, which is recreational use. It has a little hotel nearby with a swimming pool, and people go there to do kayaking and water skiing and a few other things. So it's a really not used for anything at all now. There are also reservoirs which were built, especially the minor reservoirs, which were built exclusively for one purpose only. So, for example, here in Tainan, one of the districts of Tainan, what used to be called Tainan County, is a district called Yujing, which is famous for mangoes. It's one of Taiwan's most important mango growing regions. And Yujing has two minor reservoirs which supply irrigation water. One is Manzimanpi Reservoir, and one is Jianmian Reservoir. And they're both really quite small. So Jianmian Reservoir, for example, has a capacity of 1 million cubic meters. And to give some perspective on that, Shimen Reservoir, which I mentioned earlier, up in northern Taiwan, which is probably one of Taiwan's most famous reservoirs, that has a design capacity of 300 million cubic meters. So 1 million as against 300 million. So you can see the difference in scale here. So anyway, you have a lot of variability in the functions that different reservoirs perform. But there's four major ones basically: water conservation, flood control, recreational use, and power generation, electricity generation. With regard to water conservation, you can subdivide that further as well. So you have you conserve water in a reservoir for residential use, industrial use, and agricultural use. And in Taiwan, the largest use of water is agriculture, as it is elsewhere in the world. I can't remember the exact figures, but I think agriculture is around 50%, 45 to 50% of Taiwan's water consumption. It might be slightly higher. Industry follows that with something of the order of 30 to 40%. And then there you have residential use. Residential use is really a small part of Taiwan's water consumption. So that's quite a key point to bear in mind during discussions of water consumption and water conservation, because it's very often the case that you'll see in the newspapers or other media outlets or in university discussions, people will talk about how to get the public, meaning people in their houses, in their homes and residences, to conserve water by cutting down their water use. But in the grander scale of things, it's not going to make that much difference, because most of the water goes to either agriculture or industry. The water savings that we can make in our house are really beneficial to us as residents in terms of cutting down the water bill.
Could I stop you there and ask you a quick question? Why do you think that's is it a mistake, or is it a misunderstanding? Why do you think that misunderstanding or misconception is typically made? Is it due to ignorance? Is it due to a particular?
I think with different people you have different things going on. So I think sometimes it's just ignorance, and I think sometimes it's political axe grinding and the desire to institute controls. But anyway, I want to go to your next question.
Sure. All right.
Which
is
one
day. So, you've mentioned in your most recent blog post, which we'll link in the comments section below this video, that sedimentation is not such a major problem in Taiwan's reservoirs, and this is a mistake that lots of writers have made, especially recently. Can you explain why they might make this false assumption, why this specific, and what specific technological measures have been taken to ensure that sedimentation is not a major problem in Taiwan's reservoirs?
Right, okay. So, just to clarify, these are your questions that you're reading out, not mine. I haven't written these questions for you. You sound like I've prepared the questions for you and you're reading them out. But anyway,
These are my questions that I prepared for you, yes.
So anyway, no, it's a key point. It's a really key point because it's misrepresented in the media, and
that's fine. I'll take the blame for any flack. That's fine. Anyway.
Yeah. So okay. So the sedimentation of Taiwan's reservoirs. This is a major key point. It's often misrepresented in the media. In fact, I go so far as to say it's typically misrepresented in the media, and it's probably also a point of which most people are unaware. Now, the picture that's usually presented to the public is that heavy rainfall events, like for example during typhoons, cause soil erosion high up in the mountains, which results then in landslides, mudslides, which in turn cause large volumes of sediments to flow downstream in Taiwan's rivers and into the reservoirs. And the buildup then of silt, or more accurately, sediments, the buildup of sediments in the reservoirs then reduces the capacity of the reservoirs, meaning that you can store less water, and necessitates a very expensive cleanup process and actually a lot of remedial engineering work as well, which is even more expensive. Now, that's true as far as it goes. The problem is that that picture is typically presented in the generic. So it's presented as if this is the case in general across Taiwan's reservoirs, when in fact, of Taiwan's 24 major reservoirs, this is only the case at 5. Now,
That's 5
it's also 5 to 24. 5 to 24. Now, those reservoirs, I'll name them. They are Shimen Reservoir in Taoyuan County in the north of Taiwan, Wanda Reservoir in central Taiwan, Nantong County, and Zhangwen Reservoir in Jiayi County in southern Taiwan, Nanhua and Baihai reservoirs also here in Tainan in southern Taiwan in Tainan County. I'm saying Tainan County and Kaohsiung County, although a few years back they changed the administrative definition to now refer to Greater Kaohsiung, Greater Tainan. I find it easier to use the old terms of Tainan County, Kaohsiung County. I find the Greater Tainan to be often used. So anyway, there are 5 reservoirs out of 24 which have this sedimentation problem. And I mean, I should point out that the sedimentation problem is also true for Taiwan's major rivers. So in particular, the Zhoushui River, Zhoushui that flows through central Taiwan from Nantou down between Yunlin and Jianhua counties, has a really serious sedimentation problem. So much so that the 2 barrages at Wujie, high up the mountains, and further downstream at Jiji they are 2 barrages across the river, and behind them you have a major buildup of sediment. So those are not reservoirs technically, but they do have that problem also. Now, of the total of 24 major reservoirs, 16 of these are actually sited upstream. So that means that whereas the 5 reservoirs that do have the problem are sited on the course of a riverbed, so that when you have erosion high up in the mountains, which then falls into the river and drifts downstream, they drift into the reservoir directly. But these other 16 of the 24, 16 reservoirs are sited upstream. So they have no physical contact with the river itself. What happens is that these reservoirs, they're fed by trans-basin diversion channels. So you will typically have a weir intake structure alongside a riverbank, which takes water in through a series of gates into what is then a sedimentation tank, which is a large concrete box. It has a somewhat hexagonal shape with 2 sides longer than the others, and a series of concrete walls in between to separate the water into different flows, and allows the water to slow down. So as the fast-moving water from the river enters the gates and into the sedimentation tank, the flow then slows down. The sedimentation tank is much wider than the initial channel. So the water slows down, and that allows the sediments to percolate down, to fall down to the bottom of the tank and collect there, leaving relatively clean water to then pass through another gate into the tunnel, and it goes through a tunnel and then finally into the reservoir. So,
So much of the sediment is already separated by the time that the water reaches the reservoir in the first place.
yes, exactly. So now the reason for that, so when you have a heavy rainfall event and you have a lot of sediment in the river, what will happen is that the gates on the weir entrapment structure to take water into the initial penstock and into the sedimentation tank, these gates will close. Now that's as much to protect the actual channel, the underground tunnel leading to the reservoir, as much as it is to protect the reservoir. So these 16 reservoirs just simply will not have this problem because you can shut off the water inflow. Now that's also advantageous because it means, in another sense, those reservoirs are also protected from catastrophic water inflow. So if you have far too much water, forget sediment for the moment, if you have far too much water, those reservoirs are going to be okay because you can shut off the water supply to them. And the only supply they will have to deal with is direct rainfall on top of the surface of the reservoir, which is a very small amount. So that's great. And that fact goes unmentioned typically in the media. Now, there are a further 7 reservoirs which avoid the sedimentation problem owing to some combination of strict watershed management policies and peculiar features of the watershed behind the reservoir from which it draws its feeder streams. So I can list these for you. These are Fagan Reservoir in Taipei, and this is the most famous example. Because Fagan Reservoir supplies most of, or a lot of, it's a reserve drinking water supply for Taipei City. There is a very, very strict watershed management policy where there are 24-hour CCTV cameras across the strip, the length of the reservoir. There's police boat patrols several times a day. There are, oh my God. Yeah, there are also heavy restrictions on development. So although there are a few small roads in and around Fagan Reservoir, and you've got a couple of like tea shops and things like this, and a couple of farms, there's really very, very little development. And the watershed is not quite pristine, but it's almost pristine. So that means that you have.
I'm curious if I can break in here.
Yeah, sure.
Why such a high security levels exactly for that particular reservoir?
To make sure that the reservoir does not suffer from soil erosion. Okay. So if you have soil erosion along the banks due to excess development and people running around and things like this, and people do whatever they want to do, then you're going to have a buildup of sediment, which was what they found at Shillong Reservoir. So this is partly based on the experience of what happened at Shillong Reservoir, which was built in the 1960s. Fagan Reservoir was built a lot later in the 1980s. So they're really just learning from historical example there. Mudan Reservoir in Pingdong, it doesn't have quite the same level of strict watershed management, but it's somewhat similar, and there's very little development at the back of Mudan Reservoir. It's really wild. It's kind of a wilderness. And so Mudan Reservoir, although it's actually on site, on stream, it doesn't have the huge sedimentation problem that other reservoirs have. Also because the topography of the river is very peculiar in that the river is already at its meandering stage, slow-moving meandering stage before it enters the reservoir, which is actually really, really good, which is what you want, because if you have very slow-moving water, you have a lot of time for sediments to deposit upstream. And so the water that then enters the reservoir is relatively clean. This is also the case at Dapu Reservoir in Hsinchu, which is also known as the Metan. And that was actually the first reservoir built by Taiwanese engineers without the help of either the Japanese or the Americans. And that reservoir, it's a little bit famous because it has that big, huge bronze Buddha statue in an island in the middle. I don't know if you know. But the river that feeds that reservoir in Hsinchu is very long and very winding for a long distance before it enters the reservoir. So a lot of the sediment really gets deposited further upstream.
Is it also true in water influx, like say for example in a typhoon or something like that? Does it meandering? You mentioned the meandering of the river. Does that also help during typhoon times?
Yes,
Okay.
the Dapu
I'm
Reservoir
guessing the
does
water
get.
would speed up then, right, because of the volume and everything, right? So
Yes,
okay.
yes, it does. But the Dapu Reservoir in Shinju, it does have some sedimentation, but it's not a serious problem. Um, Now, part of the reason for that also is that one on one count you have a very small amount of sediment in the reservoir from typhoons, but two, this reservoir does not supply drinking water. It's an irrigation only reservoir,
Okay.
uh, so it's not a great problem in any case. Um, okay, so let's go to question 4.
All right. So along those lines, you're mentioning some of the reservoirs by name and what have you. Are there any other major reservoir construction or repair plans in Taiwan's future? And if so, can you mention some of those?
Yeah. So right now, the new Susui channel is being constructed at 3 of the 5 reservoirs I mentioned earlier. So those are Zhengwen Reservoir, which is Taiwan's largest reservoir in Jiayi, Nanhua Reservoir, and Baihai Reservoir, which are both here in Tainan. And now, what is the Susui channel? Susui channel is a kind of tunnel that it's kind of tunnel from the base of the reservoir, the bed of the reservoir, that passes either underneath the dam or through a mountainside, and it allows the more turbid water from the bottom of the reservoir to be discharged, rather than the cleaner, less turbid water from near the surface of the reservoir, which is what you want, really. What you want is, if you have a large reservoir and you have a lot of water inflow, and you need to discharge some water in order to protect your dam, you really want to use your spillway as the last resort. What you would prefer to, because the spillway is always located near the top, the surface of the reservoir. What you would prefer to do is to open up channels at the bottom, near the base of the dam, or going through the mountainsides, to let water from the bottom of the reservoir out, and try to preserve that cleaner water at the top. Now, those sluiceway channels are being built at Baihai, Nanhua, and Zhengwen reservoirs primarily to address the sedimentation problem that we mentioned earlier. And so, now, Zhengwen Reservoir already had 2 sluiceways in addition to its spillway. But the problem was that there was design, essentially, that they had a far too narrow diameter, and the angle at which they were set was insufficient to get enough gravitational force to flush the water and sediments through. And so the new tunnel has peculiar, they call it the elephant nose design, and it has a peculiar design at the top, and then a more steeper angle, which then changes halfway down, and a much larger diameter. They're like 3 times the size of the original sluiceways. So that should help to flush out a lot of the sediments. It will not be able to flush out all of the sedimentation at Taiwan Reservoir, simply because the sediments that were deposited across the length of the reservoir, all the way to the back. And the sluiceways at the front will really only be able to remove sediments at the front of the reservoir. So you might get something like 20% dislodged, but the other sediments will have to stay there. Now, they did have a plan to build another sluiceway tunnel going from toward the end of the back end to the northern end of the reservoir, the Zhengwen Reservoir, and going around the side to the front. And that sluiceway, the purpose of that sluiceway would be to shift sediments at the middle and the back of the reservoir and shift them all the way around to the front. But the problem with that is budget. I mean, we're talking magic money tree stuff, so it's just so expensive, so they were not able to do that. And Baihe Reservoir and Nanhar Reservoir both have new sluiceways being constructed too. So Nanhar Reservoir, which is a large reservoir in China, completed in 1995, I think, if I remember correctly, already has two sluiceway tunnels also, but they pass underneath the dam. And the problem in Nanhua is that sedimentation built up in a corner of the mountainside adjacent to the dam. So as the water flows into the reservoir, much of the sediment is not deposited at the front of the dam, at the foot of the dam, nor is it deposited further back. It accumulates in this little cleft behind this mountainside, and it builds up. And so what they're doing now is building a sluiceway tunnel through that mountainside at a steep angle to take the sediments out. And that has a different design from the one at Zhengwen, but in some ways it's quite similar. Now the one at Baihe is quite different. Now Baihe Reservoir is a major reservoir, but it's a lot smaller than even Nanhua or Zhengwen. Nanhua and Zhengwen are really, really big reservoirs. They're two of Taiwan's 5 largest reservoirs. Zhengwen is the largest, Nanhua is the 5th largest in Taiwan. Baihe is a lot small, so I'll give you some figures to understand that. The design capacity of Zhengwen Reservoir is 600 million cubic meters, which is twice the size of Shenzhen Reservoir. Nanhua Reservoir is, if I remember correctly, 150 or 175 million cubic meters. Baihe Reservoir is 9 million cubic meters. So an order of magnitude smaller. But it's still a major reservoir. And the problem with Baihe Reservoir was that it was built on the site of 2 reservoirs, the site of 2 rivers, the Baihe River, literally White River in Chinese, and another smaller unnamed river. Now, both of these rivers follow rather truncated, short courses before they enter the reservoir, meaning that sediment does not have much time to deposit upstream before the river reaches the reservoir, unlike, for example, Baku Reservoir in Hsinchu. And so, Baihe Reservoir over the years has filled up at the front because the 2 rivers enter the front of the reservoir from the side. It's an odd design. And the front of the Baihe Reservoir is filled up with sediment so much so that even the difference now from even 5 years ago is astonishing. I can look back at the photographs I took 5 years ago and the photographs I took last weekend, and it's like night and day.
Those photos are all on your blog, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'll link to them below.
Okay, good.
So there's a huge amount of sediment, which now renders Baihe Reservoir effectively as 2 reservoirs. The front part, which is now completely dysfunctional, which sits right at the front of the dam, and then the rest of the reservoir, which is really cut off. It's just cut off from the rest of the reservoir. So it's on life support at the moment, and the sedimentation problem is so bad. Now, the reason for this is, as I said, the rivers are too short, but also that the original designers did not think to build a sluiceway tunnel to take water from the base of the reservoir and take it out. They only had a spillway and 2 intake structures to take water. One structure to take water out for irrigation through an irrigation channel for local farms, and another to have water sent on by a pipe, pressurized, to a water treatment facility down further west. Now, 5 to 6 years ago when I started this project and I first visited Baihe Reservoir, it was obvious to me even then, and the reservoir was in a much healthier state then than it is now. It was so you could go from the front to the back on a boat. You could paddle a boat or a motorboat, and you could take the boat from the front of the reservoir to the back of the reservoir. That's no longer possible. And during the dry season, when the water level was really low, you could actually walk from the back to the front, and I did. Yeah, I have photos to prove it, but today that's no longer possible, and the reason is that the sediment has encroached so far from the river entry point, which enters the reservoir at the south. The sediment has encroached so far northwards that you now have a de facto swamp, and with reeds growing everywhere, and it's populated by sandpipers. There's literally no way through.
You said this change is very pronounced just over the past 5 years. I'm curious why the past 5 years have been so. The past 5 years in particular, I've witnessed such a strange or such a large difference. Any reason for that?
I'm not sure.
I'm guessing it's been building up over probably decades, even.
Yes.
But you said it's so noticeable over the last 5 years. It sounds like a curious situation.
I don't have data to track the historical buildup of sediment from the reservoir's final construction in 1961, I think it was, up to today. So whether the sediment buildup of the past 5 years has been proportionately more than in previous years, I'm not sure. I'm just remarking on the fact that I can observe the buildup simply through comparing my own photographs over time. So I said 5 years ago when I was watching this, I said even then that Baja Reservoir desperately needed remedial engineering work. There was two jobs that had to be done. One was the new sluiceway had to be constructed to take this sediment and flush it out. But the second thing that had to be done was that a huge, lengthy excavation process of just sending in as many excavators and dump trucks and just digging out as much of this mud and sediment buildup as possible and shifting it out. And they were even 5 years ago they were doing this, but they were doing it within a limited budget. Now, this is a point where I'm going to digress slightly because
Please do.
In the article that we referenced earlier that was published in Taiwan News on February 10th and authored by Michael Turton, a blogger up in Taiwan, he made a number of errors and just simply factual errors. One of which was that he said that the Taiwan central government, takes tender care of Taipei City at the expense of the rest of Taiwan, and that Taipei sucks in resources from elsewhere around Taiwan in order to take care of people in Taipei. Now, without disputing that claim, that broad claim as such, I do dispute the example he used to illustrate that point. And his example was that Fagan Reservoir in Taipei is funded by the central government. And that the maintenance of Fagan Reservoir, the funding comes from the central government. With the insinuation being that other reservoirs across Taiwan are funded by the local governments. Now, that's just not true. He's made a mistake there, I think. Fagan Reservoir is managed by the Taipei Fagan Reservoir Administration, which is autonomous and is funded by the central government. Other major reservoirs in Taiwan are funded and operated by the Water Resources Agency, which is split into 3 different regional offices. The Northern Taiwan Office of the Water Resources Agency, the Central Taiwan Office, and the Southern Region Taiwan Office. And the problem at Baja Reservoir was not that the remedial work wasn't carried out due to a lack of funds from the local government. It wasn't carried out because of a lack of funding to the South Taiwan Water Resources Agency from the central government. The central government provided a lot of funding, but they didn't provide enough funding for the South Taiwan Water Resources Office to do everything that they wanted to do, because they had a lot of problems. They had a lot of projects that they were working on in South Taiwan, including after Typhoon Morakot in 2009, the cleanup operations at Zengwen and Nanhao reservoirs, which were extremely expensive, to the tune of something like 16 billion NT. And so funding for the Baihai Reservoir has been delayed until now, and only now the funding is starting to come through. So the construction of this new sluice way at Baihai Reservoir has been needed for many, many years, and is only just now, last year, it just started. I think it was June last year it started. So the tunnel is underway, and they've started actually. They've got the outside channel at the front of the dam, the downstream side of the dam, mostly complete, and they're starting to dig the tunnel through the mountain side to dig into the side of the reservoir itself. So that's ongoing, and it won't be finished for another couple of years yet. There's a bunch of other projects going on as well. So I don't know if I've got time to talk about those. I could be mentioned. There's Wusan Reservoir here in Thailand, which is the first reservoir built in Taiwan, and the first major reservoir built in Taiwan, built by the famous Japanese engineer Batian Luigi Hatta. This is English, the English version of his name. Wusan Reservoir is a fabulous piece of engineering, and it does have a couple of problems though. And one of the problems was that Wusan Reservoir was fed by a trans-basin diversion tunnel originally built by Batian himself in the 1920s. But it is now, 80 years old, and it's at risk of collapse due to erosion. And the problem is not sedimentation and typhoons. The problem here is just the water itself. Over such a long period of time, water itself has an erosion effect on the walls of the tunnel, the concrete walls. And so they are now designing and constructing they're constructing a new trans-basin diversion tunnel, which will run parallel to the old one. And that's under construction right now, which is a very interesting project in itself. The engineering is quite interesting. The design is quite different from the original design. So anyway, that's the sluice phase. What else did I want to mention here? Okay, I spent quite a bit of time talking about that, so I'll just quickly finish up. One of the main advantages of the sluice ways is not only that it allows you to discharge turbid water and sediments from the bottom of the reservoir to prevent sediment buildup and preserve your clean water. But the other advantage that they give you is that they give you extra discharge capacity. So in the event that you have a large, potentially catastrophic water inflow from extreme rainfall events, as recently happened in Northern California at the Oroville Dam.
We'll be getting to that in a moment,
yeah. So then you really need to have as much discharge capacity as possible. It helps you better manage the reservoir levels. Because what you want to avoid is you want to avoid water rising over the crest and spilling over the crest of the dam. You get that, if that situation arises, then there's a risk that the toe of the dam can slip and the dam will collapse, and that's a catastrophe. So you have to be able to manage the reservoir's levels by reducing the reservoir. Problem is, if you are only using the spillway, which was really the case at the Oroville Dam in Northern California. They were using the main spillway and the emergency spillway adjacent to it, which are both built at close to the crest of the dam, to the top of the dam. So you have a reservoir which is X amount of meters deep, and you have to wait until the water level gets to a certain point, and then you can open the gates to let the water out. But by then, you have to hope that you've got a very small amount of space to work with, getting your water out of the reservoir, and you have to hope at that point that the inflow does not substantially increase.
It's a race against the clock, yeah.
Race against the clock to get water out, yeah. And so you had the erosion of the main spillway in Oroville, which is broken, and they now have an extraordinarily expensive. It looks like they're going to get through that. It looks like it's going to be okay now, but they're going to have an extraordinarily expensive cleanup operation to do, and remedial engineering work. And one of the problems was that they only had one way of discharging water from the base of the dam, and that was through the hydroelectric power plant underneath the dam. But the capacity of that power plant to discharge water was limited. They could get, like, I think it was 16,000 cubic feet per second, which is not enough. And they had no other sluiceways. They had no other ways. They only had 3 outlets of water: the hydroelectric power plant, the main spillway, and an emergency spillway. So
no sluiceway. Okay, I guess
no sluiceway.
I guess I
So
misunderstood the whole problem. Okay, that's...
So it was a real surprise. I was really surprised to see that. And thankfully, at Taiwan, most of our reservoirs, as I said earlier, 16 of the 24 major reservoirs don't have that problem anyway, because you can shut off the water inflow. But the remaining 5 that do have the sedimentation problem are also subject to this problem that we've seen in Northern California. But the construction of new sluiceways should help
So
if that happens.
essentially, let me break in here for a moment. Essentially, the problem at Oroville is actually twofold. You don't have a sluiceway, and there's no way to shut off the water inflow.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah.
And that basically is where you get the disaster from. Okay, that's the making of the disaster right there.
Yeah.
Right. So that kind of leads me to my next question then. Being that we're talking about Oroville, do you believe that Taiwan's well, I guess you've already kind of answered this question in some ways, because you mentioned that Taiwan's dams don't really have any
Okay.
or most of Taiwan's problems don't have that or most of Taiwan's dams don't have that potential problem. But in the future, I mean, are there any steps that Taiwan could take to avoid similar problems? Because you said 16 out of 24, is that right, don't have this problem.
Yeah.
There are still 8 that have this potential problem. So what measures could
5.
you take to...
Five.
5, I'm sorry, okay. So what potential measures could be taken to avoid an Oroville-like disaster?
They're doing it now. The new sluiceways being constructed by her now in Zenglen will help to avoid that problem. Also, the other 2 reservoirs that have this problem, one is Sunan Reservoir in Taoyuan, in northern Taiwan, and Wandao Reservoir in central Taiwan, in Nantou County. Now, Sunan Reservoir desperately needs remedial engineering work. It really does. And they have...
It's an age problem, technology problem?
Design. It's a design problem. It does have 2 sluiceways and another discharge channel to the hydroelectric power plant, as well as the major spillway, but it's insufficient. And Sunan Reservoir has been struggling. The management for Sunan Reservoir, they've been struggling with sedimentation problems since Typhoon Gloria in 1962. I think it was 1962, and it really needs to have they really need a substantial cleanup. So they have a permanent dredging operation now to dredge sediment from the bottom of the reservoir, just using pumps, sucking the sediments out. But you can only do so much at a time. And there was a plan drawn up a few years ago to really get moving forward with this. And what they wanted to do was to build a new reservoir in the mountains of Hsinchu County, which would have been called Gaotai Reservoir. And it would have been a fairly large-scale reservoir, fed from the same river, the Dahanxi, as Sunan Reservoir. And so what you would do is you would build and complete the Gaotai Reservoir, and it was to be sited upstream, so that you would then have a short trans-basin diversion channel with a rear intake structure to feed water indirectly to Gaotai Reservoir. You could shut it off if you need to, but you would feed the water into Gaotai Reservoir, and thereby you would shut off, at the same time, you would shut off most of the flow into Sunan Reservoir. And that would allow you to draw down Sunan Reservoir while still conserving water in Gaotai Reservoir, and clean up the base of Sunan Reservoir and allow the engineers to do their remedial engineering work. The problem is that this project has not got off the ground due to opposition from local Aboriginal groups who live in the mountains of Hsinchu. And this is a fairly common problem across Taiwan. Whenever the Water Resources Agency have plans to build a new reservoir, you get a combination of groups opposed to the new reservoir. And these groups are typically either the Aboriginals who live in the mountains, or local farmers, or the green NGOs who oppose the new dams for ecological reasons. So at the moment, Galtai Reservoir doesn't look like it's going to get built. So the Water Resources Agency, the Northern Office, is going to have to find other ways to deal with the problem of Shilling Reservoir. But Wanda Reservoir in Nantou has a huge sediment problem, much more serious than Shilling Reservoir, and it's so serious that you can actually see it. Like at Taiwan Reservoir, the problem is serious, but you could never actually see it. I mean, unless the water level dropped really low, and you can see a little bit at the back of the reservoir. But you can never see it at the front because the water will never come down that low. But at Wanda Reservoir in Nantou, which is a long rectangular shaped reservoir, you can see it at the back. It's absolutely enormous. It's just like it looks like a sort of no man's land of just dried up sediment and rock right at the back of the reservoir, like a creeping hand made out of rock and mud, creeping slowly upstream, slowly downstream. So that's really serious. And so far as I know, there are no plans to deal with that yet. I mean, partly that's to do with the function of Wanda Reservoir is primarily water conservation for two purposes. One was hydroelectric power generation, and the other is irrigation, but irrigation further downstream. They're saving water in the Zhoushui River, which is Taiwan's largest river, so that it can be then diverted elsewhere. So downstream from Wanda Reservoir, there is a bend in the river, which is sometimes referred to as Wujie Reservoir, because it's next to an Aboriginal town called Wujie. And Wujie also has a large buildup of sediment, which is obvious. It's obvious to the naked eye, as does most of the course of the river. And many years ago, in the 1930s, from Wujie there was a tunnel, a trans-basin diversion tunnel, to take water from Wujie through the mountainside down and deposit the water into Sunmoon Lake, Koreatown. And that led to a buildup of sediment over time as well, just because the Zhoushui River has so much sediment in it. Now, however, since this is from 2006 onwards, Sunmoon Lake is fed by a separate new diversion channel, which takes water from a smaller, lighter, cleaner stream to the east of the Zhoushui River, and that goes directly into Sunmoon Lake. So Sunmoon Lake doesn't have that sedimentation problem any longer, but it used to do. It used to have. But Wanda Reservoir is a nightmare, and as far as I'm aware, they don't have any plans to do with that yet. So that's an ongoing issue. I mean, the other thing I could mention as well is with regards to threats and dangers for Taiwan's dams is the possibility of earthquakes. And it's fascinating that most of Taiwan's dams, in fact, no, most all of Taiwan's dams have survived the large 1999 earthquake, which was a magnitude 7. Except
the 921, yeah.
The 921 earthquake, except for one, which was a barrage, not a dam as such, but a barrage on the Fagan barrage on the Dershi River in Taichung County. And all that happened there was that the northernmost the barrage spanned the river from south to north, and the northern end of the barrage collapsed. The barrage is still a functioning barrage, so it wasn't a catastrophe, but it was a
certainly a scare.
major damage. Yeah. But and there was also a couple of minor cracks apparently in the Mingtan Dam, which is one of two dams to the west of Sun Moon Lake, which are used for hydroelectric power generation. But my understanding is that those is being repaired, and I think, I would not say all, but I think most of Taiwan's major dams have constant electronic monitoring the small movements in the dam due to earthquakes, so that they can be repaired. There's a couple of dams I'm not sure about. I'm not sure about Wanda, but the reason for that is that the downstream face of the dam itself is inaccessible to the public, and there's very little public information about it. So it may be that they do have electronic monitoring as they do to other dams, and you'd think that would be a sensible thing for them to do. But it's difficult for me to check because lack of public information, and it's very, very difficult to get in. Very, very difficult to get access to the downstream face of the dam. It's away from the public, there are no paths to get there. The only way to get there is via the river, but the river hasn't been.
I'm curious why they...
Yes, by design, but design adapted to the shape of the mountainsides. It's just the shape of the mountainside. They have to. It's one of the few dams in Taiwan which is actually east-facing. Usually in Taiwan, the dams are all built in the mountains or the foothills, and they're west-facing because the rivers run east to west. This is one of the few examples where the dam is actually facing east, but then the river kind of turns, it makes a U-bend and comes around. So that's slightly odd. You could probably get photographs using a remote controlled unmanned aerial vehicle, a little UAV, but that's about the only way you can do it, I think. So I'm not sure about that.
So on the topic of disaster here, as everyone knows, we're approaching the 6-year anniversary of the 3/11 disaster at Fukushima, the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, and that'll be happening just in a few days from this video's posting. And Taiwan has also since experienced a very strong because of the disaster in Japan. Excuse me. Very strong and very vocal anti-nuclear movement. I'm curious what percentage. First of all, I'm curious what percentage of Taiwan's electricity power supply actually comes from hydropower.
Mm-hmm. Electricity. It's something like just over 1%. Okay. Just 1% to 1.5%. As a total of as a percentage of total energy supply, it's something like 0.3%. It's really tiny. So hydropower is in Taiwan, as in most countries where it's used, is a very small percentage of the overall total electricity generation. It's still very, very important though, because pumped hydro, which is where you have a large dam and a large hydrological head, which is a large height from which water can fall through the turbines at short notice, is very important for in the event of a blackout, and you need to start the grid up again from a blackout situation. Coal-fired power stations, gas-fired power stations, nuclear power stations, all these other kinds of power stations take time, and they take time to start up, and they start up gradually. They produce a little bit of power, and then more and more and more. And pumped storage hydro is really the only practical one, where you can get a very, very large volume of electricity generated immediately, enough to start the grid up. Okay. So the pumped storage hydro dams in Taiwan's reservoirs are really important in that respect. And there are 4 really important ones. There's a couple extras, but 4 really important ones. There's the complex at Mingtan and Ninghu reservoirs next to Sun Moon Lake, and the large power plant at Fagan and the one at Shunnan. So the large one at Fagan and then the large one at Zhengwen. I think the one at Zhengwen is larger than Shunnan. You also have a few of these at several other reservoirs. So Wu Santong Reservoir has 2, but they're quite small, generally with little power. But that's the importance of hydro. It's more a case of starting the grid again from a blackout, rather than making a large contribution to the power supply. There was some newspaper reports last year that the Water Resources Agency and Taiwan were considering adding to the total of pump storage hydro and hydro in general, because you can also have smaller hydroelectric power plants on rivers where you have a running river, and the running river provides a more or less constant source of power. But those tend to be very, very small scale. And the number of locations at which you can build these are limited by geography. And the geography also limits the scale on which you can build them. So, yes, the Taiwan Power Company and the Water Resources Agency can work together to try to upgrade the existing facilities and to add new ones, and I think that they're probably going to try to do that, but I don't think that that's going to make hydro a substantially greater contributor to Taiwan's total electricity generation. So I don't think it's going to happen, no.
I guess this then is going to be the last question, but probably the most entertaining for most of us anyway. I was going to ask a fairly long question, but I think I'm just going to kind of like open the door for you here. You mentioned in your blog post, again, which is going to be linked at the bottom of this video, some philosophical differences that you had with Michael Turton on the article that we mentioned earlier in Taiwan News, and I'm curious if you could kind of give us some more details on the philosophical differences, or maybe even, if I can venture to say, there's political differences that you might have with him regarding solutions, or we mentioned some of the factual differences or factual problems associated with that article. If you could kind of get into a little bit more of the philosophical differences that you have with him, that would be wonderful.
Okay, I do have to start with a couple of drier factual things first off. So first of all, what Michael Turton was talking about in his article, he was talking about water policy in general in Taiwan, and one of the points that he was making, I suppose his main point that he was making was that the water in Taiwan is strongly mispriced, and it's priced too low, and that in order to avoid water shortages in the future, the Taiwan Water Corporation and the Taipei Water Department, because you have these two separate monopolies, Taipei Water Department for Taipei and the Taiwan Water Corporation for the rest of Taiwan. But these two organizations need to look at ways of progressively increasing water prices.
Let me stop you there. Let me ask you very quickly, what causes for this artificially low price is basically what you're saying. What's the cause of it?
Okay, so you have essentially a state-owned monopoly, Taiwan Water Corporation, responsible in conjunction with the Ministry of Economic Affairs for setting water prices. And there's been a long-standing priority to try to maintain a low price of water, along with a low price of electricity. And this is for understandable reasons. One, because residents like to have cheap water, and also because factory owners like to have relatively cheap water because they need a lot of it. They buy it in large volumes and need a lot of cheap water. Farmers also, everyone wants cheap water. So the government has a long-standing policy of trying to keep the water price low. And this...
So essentially it's a political issue.
Yes, excuse me. This has led to water shortages. And Michael Turton is correct to point out that water prices are a part of the problem. He's also correct that people respond to price incentives. However, this is my issue with Michael Turton here is that this is a very low resolution examination of the problem. It's very very basic. He's missing out a large aspect of the problem, which is that water is often consumed in other manners rather than just the price of water per se. You also need to consider the prices of other goods which use a lot of water. So in particular, agricultural goods like rice. Now, an easy way to kind of visualize and think about this in shorthand form is that a couple of years ago, when there was I think it was 2015 or 2014, the drought in Taiwan that hit northern Taiwan particularly hard. And I think Kaohsiung was hit harder than Thailand. There was a bit of a drought in Kaohsiung. You'll remember this better than I do, because I'm in Thailand, we have plenty of water. But Kaohsiung...
for several weeks, I believe, yeah.
Right. We didn't have anything like that in Thailand, but Kaohsiung and Taipei had it, and Taiwan, I think, Xinbei as well, I think, had it quite bad. The price of rice during and after the drought, it'd be interesting to see what the price of rice was, because I'd imagine it'd be very, very low. And the reason this is what's happening, my point here is that when we consume water, we're not just consuming water directly in the form of water itself, but also in the form of food, like rice. Because rice consumes an awful volume of water. And when you sell rice quite cheaply, what you're doing is you're selling water, in effect. You're selling water in the form of rice. And so the part of the problem with water shortages in Taiwan is that there isn't enough price volatility, there isn't enough price variability, price movement, and there isn't a market to allow transfers from one sector to another. So if I could have asked you 2 years ago when we had the drought in Kaohsiung, and you had rationing, and maybe you could not take a shower before you go to work, or you had to shower, you had to wash yourself using a small bowl of water or something ridiculous. If I could have asked you 2 years ago whether you would prefer to go without the shower, but have very, very cheap rice, or have more expensive rice, or no rice at all, but be able to take a shower, I'm sure you would have chosen being able to take a shower. And the reason for that is that rice...
First of all, I'm not a big fan of rice, but anyway, yeah.
Right, but rice is a more easily substitutable good. So if rice temporarily becomes too expensive or unavailable, you can substitute rice with noodles or with sweet potatoes or some other food product. Yeah. So what's happening here with water shortages is that there's an inability for the Taiwan Water Corporation to purchase water for residential use from the agricultural sector. There's a lack of transfer, and so that's where I get to the economist David Zetland, who's from California, and he's published a series of papers and books. He's written extensively on this topic, and he argues for a market system of water rights, clearly defined water rights, and an auction market where different water rights stakeholders can bid for water from other water rights stakeholders. And you have variable prices, and you have transfers and price speculation. And that will enable different users to plan more efficiently and respond to changes in prices and plan for the future and to avoid water shortages. Michael Turton's argument is that we should continue with a top-down, state-directed system where the water corporation decides, in conjunction with the Ministry of Economic Affairs, what the price of water should be for residential use, what the price of water should be for industrial use, what the price of water should be for agricultural uses, or prices in plural. But the difficulty is that when you have a top-down system like that, and you're setting prices in consultation with different stakeholders, it's more difficult to efficiently allocate water in order to achieve two ends. One is to give people as much water as they want, but the second one is to do so whilst avoiding water shortages. It's very difficult to make that calculation efficiently if you do not have an underlying price system based on a market, which is in turn based on very clearly defined individual water rights.
Essentially, it's just another problem with central planning, basically, right? I mean,
yes,
it's central problem with central planning.
It's a highest problem of calculation, and that's really the basic problem here, and the difference that I had with Michael Turton. So it puts him in a curious position of claiming correctly that the problem of water shortages in Taiwan is a consequence of public policy, and yet arguing that the solution to this problem is to continue with state-directed public policy, but just that the policy should be adjusted to raise the price of water. What his solution, I think, would likely lead to would be not to water shortages of the type that we've seen in the last few years, but of water shortages of another type, where people use less water because it's too expensive. And you then end up with consequences to that. For example, factories having to close down or having to become slightly more uncompetitive because they can't afford to deal with the increased price of water. So they will use less water. So that will be another type of water shortage. So he's really, I think he makes that argument because he already has he already identifies as a political leftist, and is, although I think he would describe himself as a pragmatist, he's really in favor of a top-down, centrally managed approach, not only to water prices, but to electricity prices and other things too. So that's very.
That's one of the central problems, I think, with the left as well, is that they have a problem with public policy, and how you change or how you deal with that problem is more public policy, which I think is at the cusp of the problem in the first place, right? Which is one thing that you've alluded to. So,
well, it's the hierarchy point that it's very, very difficult to calculate efficiently if you do not have a system of market prices on which to base the calculations. It was the same problem that the Soviet Union had. So that's he's. I mean, there were a number of other errors and points of disagreement in Michael Turton's article, but I'm not sure if we have time to go through those.
Yeah. For anyone else who's interested, they can check out your blog post, which again will be at the bottom of this video, and also do check out Michael Fagan's blog as well. He's several years. How long have you been blogging? You said on reservoirs, and I know that you've got a wealth of information there on reservoirs and other topics. So do check out his blog, which will be linked at the bottom of this this video. But how long have you said you've been blogging about reservoirs?
I think
6 years, 6 years.
6 years about reservoirs, but I started blogging I think it was 2009 or 2010. 2009 or 2010, I forget which one. Probably the end of 2009, beginning of 2010. And that's where I started. I started actually, I started the blog in order to just record my letters. I used to write letters to the Taiwan Times, and a few of which got published, and then they quickly banned me because I was...
Similar story. Similar story.
Yeah. So anyway, we should probably cut that into it.
Well, yeah, I was winding down anyway. So once again, thank you, Mike Fagan. Again, for anyone who's interested, Mike, can you just throw out your URL for your blog really quickly, and we'll also write it down at the bottom of the video. Your blog is what's the name of it?
Yeah, it's mirrorsignalmove.blogspot.com.
All right, thank
So you have to type it into Google. It has the no country redirect program so you have to put it into Google. If you put it in directly to your search engine, you probably won't get it. You have to type it into Google first, and then you'll get it.
Usually, just type in Mike Fagan blog, and it will pop right up.
Or just Mike Fagan Taiwan.
So do that. All right. Well, thank you very much again, Mike. We'll be back soon
welcome.
again with a new video very, very shortly. Thank you once again, Mike. And this is Nathan Novak from Right Taiwan, and we are signing out.